In today's video, we're talking about the October TBR, and we are doing it different here at BellTube. Yeah, we're not going to get into spooky season, as it were, apart from my atmosphere, and we're going to talk about that a little bit today. No, what we're going to do is we're going to read a lot of fantasy books, but in particular, they're all going to have scary titles. I don't know why, it just seems like a fun thing to do for the season. Before we do that though, of course there is one thing you know we have to do. It might be so scary you might jump out of your seat, or it might just be what you need. Hey, welcome back everybody. If you're brand new here, you are on BellTube, and my name is Brian Bell. Today we're going to be going over the October TBR, and like I mentioned, all we're going to be doing is reading fantasy with the caveat that they all have to have kind of scary titles. I know I've got an atmosphere set up for you today, and in today's One for the Road, which is a segment that we do at the end of every episode, intended to give you some value, intended to give you something to walk away thinking about, we're going to talk about atmosphere at the end. Of course, all of our videos are time-stamped, so if you have a particular chapter that you're not that into, don't worry, you can flip to the next chapter and get on to something else. Let's not waste any more time. Let's get right into it. Okay, book one for October, in keeping with our scary title theme. I don't know, you guys, by the way, I'm kind of pushing this, scary stuff in the title. Some are going to be a little bit more scary than others, but just the density and the scope of the material of this book, if the title alone didn't make it scary, certainly the content will. We are talking about Malazan Book of the Fallen, number 4, Stephen Erikson, House of Chains. You guys have me so addicted to Malazan, I can't even tell you. I am ahead of schedule right now as I film this at the end of September, and I'll have finished Memories of Ice by the time that this video comes out. House of Chains is the first book that we're going to be reading in October. Yeah, House of Chains has a little bit of a scary, connotation to it. There's a house, there's some chains. All right, I'm taking it. I'm taking the win on House of Chains for a scary title. Let's move on to the next one. And I should probably mention before we get to the second book that if you want to read any of these along with me, leave a comment and maybe we'll be able to discuss these books together over the course of the month. Now, this second book that I'm going to read was a gift from my brother from the South, John Minton, over at Talking Story. This is F. Paul Wilson's The Tomb. Okay, this one definitely has a scary title to it. Now, I don't know much about it other than it's urban fantasy, and it is book 1 in the Repairman Jack series. From what I understand, Repairman Jack is the guy that you go to when you've got a problem that nobody else can solve. You call Repairman Jack. Now, I remember growing up, there was another group of people you could call if you had a problem, and there's no one else to call if you could find them. Okay, but you know what? Most of you guys are too young to remember that. The Tomb, F. Paul Wilson. It's the second book that we're reading in October. Let's move on to book 3. All right, I am really stretching this whole scary title concept with this one. When I was looking over these books that I was going to be reading this month, I was trying to cram this one in and figure out how am I going to make this work, because you guys voted it in. That's right. If you subscribe to the channel, you get a free vote every month on my TBR, and this month, you guys, you picked The Shadow of the Gods by John Gwynne. This is book 1 in his Bloodsworn saga. All right, so let's talk about scary for a second. Clearly, that dragon on there is a little bit scary. Just roll with me on this, okay? Shadow, ooh, it's not just a god, it's a shadow of the god. You gotta bear with me here. I'm trying to fit this in. Okay, Shadow of the Gods. You guys voted this in. I'm excited to read it. You know, Christopher Navo, who has his own YouTube channel called Christopher Navo, sent me that as a gift. And I'm going to get into book 2 as we get into the September book haul, because one of our amazing patrons, Heidi, also sent me a book in this series. We'll get into that as we go. So by simply hitting that subscribe button, you get to participate in these polls and help determine what the TBR is on the channel. Of course, we always have a 4th spot in this TBR poll that says Other, where you can write in your recommendations, and you'd be surprised. A lot of those I end up reading anyway in the recommendations that you guys just throw in there. So subscribe to the channel, you get to vote in the poll, all that good stuff. Like, subscribe, you know the drill. Let's move on to the next book. Now, this next book that we're going to be reading in November, now this has a scary title, because murder is pretty scary if you think about it. Now, this book won the SBFBO competition last year, and I am talking about the book Murder at Spindle Manor, and I'm going to look at my notes to see who wrote it. It is written by author Morgan Stang. All right, now, I think this is a super cool cover. I don't know a whole lot about the book. I'm guessing there's been a murder. I'm guessing there's been a murder right at Spindle Manor. I think we can probably assume that's a safe bet, but it fits in with the scary titles, Murder at Spindle Manor. Now, this one I'm going to just preface saying this is a if there's time kind of read, because House of Chains is huge and it's certainly dense. Shadow of the Gods I want to take my time with, and I do think I'll blast through the Tomb really quick, but I have some audiobooks that I'm also fitting into the month. So assuming there's time, I am going to hit Murder at Spindle Manor. All right, let's move on to the next one. Now, this next one is a lit RPG fantasy. I'm really excited about it because I've not read anything by either of these two authors. I'm going to take a quick look at my notes so I don't mess their names up. Seth McDuffee and Johnathan McClain have written a new book called Meet Your Maker. I have exciting news about this particular book next month, but I don't know a whole lot about either of these gentlemen. Hint, hint, you're going to find out about them, but more on that later. Anyway, yeah, Meet Your Maker definitely seems a little scary, because meeting your maker, well, I think we all know what happens when you meet your maker. I'm qualifying it for this competition. Competition? It's a TBR. I think I'm in competition with myself. Let's move on to the next book. All right, this next book I've been waiting to get to for a long time, and I've talked about it here quite a bit. We are again in lit RPG fantasy, and we're talking about He Who Fights with Monsters, number 11. Yeah, that's scary for a couple of reasons. One, if you're fighting with monsters, yeah, that's going to be scary. Number 2, we're on book 11. I know that's a little scary for some of you to contemplate as well, because maybe you've heard me talk about He Who Fights with Monsters, which is written by Travis Deverell, aka Shirtaloon was his original pen name for the series, but he's since, started using his actual name. So I know a lot of you have heard me talk about this series before, and then you get a little scared off because you're hearing about books 9, books 10, books 11. Here's the only thing I'm going to say about that. If these later books weren't good, I wouldn't be continuing in the series. So have some faith. Try to pick up He Who Fights with Monsters, number 1. If you are able to do audio, I really do recommend you do it on audio, because Heath Miller is the name of the narrator, and he does just such a fantastic job with a pretty deep character cast. And he keeps the voices pretty fresh, distinctive, and unique. And I know for a lot of us who listen to a lot of books, we want those voices to be a bit singular, right? We don't want to have mixing of voices, so at times we're not sure who's talking. Heath Miller does such a fantastic job with this. You always know who's talking. He Who Fights with Monsters, number 11. It's up for October. Of course, I always do have to say thank you to our amazing patrons of this channel. We do have a Patreon. It's listed in the description. It's less than 6 cents a day. It's literally 8 quarters a month, maybe even a little bit less than that. It's nothing. If you want to join our intimate Patreon, we'd love to have you there. All right, so let's do a quick one for the road today. It's all going to be about creating atmosphere, like I spoke about earlier. So as you can clearly see here, I've got my walls of skulls around me, but you can't see. Maybe I'll throw it. I don't know. I'll throw it in the description somewhere. There's also a photo of my buddy Gargoyle back there. Or actually, it's not a photo. It's a real Gargoyle, but I think he's out of camera frame. But more importantly, I want to talk about setting your atmosphere and creating your atmosphere, because I think depending on what our particular goal is, that's going to inform what we want our atmosphere to be like. And I think to the degree that we can take a hand in our own atmosphere creation, the more likely it is that our goals and our hopes and things that we're working on get accomplished quicker. So what do I mean by that? I mean, ask yourself a simple question. In order for me to get blank done, what type of atmosphere would be most conducive for me to doing that? Now, is it at your house? Maybe your apartment, your condo, wherever you live. Is it at your home? The answer is maybe. If it's not, then we have kind of a part two question. Are you able to go to wherever it is that's outside your home? Because some of us have commitments, right? You've got family, you've got work from home, you've got those types of things that might require you to be home and not out and about in an atmosphere that is more conducive to accomplishing tasks and goals. So then the question becomes, all right, if I can't go anywhere, what can I do here to bring the outside inside? And I don't just mean, outdoors. I mean wherever it is outside of your immediate vicinity that in your mind would work really well for, task accomplishment. How can you bring that in? So I'll give you an example. I know a lot of writer friends of mine, and they think about, if I could just go to an outdoor cabin, right? Or if I could just go to some hotel room for a week and I could, have that space to write, it would be so wonderful because the atmosphere would be perfect and I would be distraction free. Well, then my challenge is, how can we create that type? And again, in this example, we're talking about a log cabin atmosphere or a hotel atmosphere. Can we accomplish that by maybe having some YouTube videos on that give that atmosphere? I'm going to put some of my favorite ones in the descriptions themselves, right? Or if it's not something, physical like that, is there something more atmospheric that you can do to create harmony? For example, if your place is really kind of cluttered, is there a way for you to spend 5 to 10 minutes to declutter yourself? And will that help organize your thoughts a little bit better so they're not distracted by this cluttered energy that I know if it happens to me, I get distracted. My guess is that it happens to you. Every now and then we'll see on TV or in some movie, they'll walk into some office, right? And there's just books everywhere piled up and it's just one big junk clutter. And yet somehow the person within that room knows where everything is and it's perfectly great. I don't think that's how the world works. I think the people that generally have some sense of organization in their life tend to hit their goals a little bit quicker than the ones that are totally scattered and all over the board. So I know I've kind of gone on a little bit longer than I normally do on this one for the road, but I just want to kind of press on the importance of creating your atmosphere, especially if the atmosphere that you're in right now, you don't personally feel is conducive to what you're trying to accomplish. What can you then do to make it a little bit closer to that goal? I'm so looking forward to October. I have to know in the comments below, what are you reading for October? Are you doing spooky season? Are you reading horror books? Are you more like me that is more in the fantasy side of things and horror just doesn't do a lot for you? I think sometime in the month of October, I'm actually going to talk about why I don't really read horror books. And I think you'll be surprised because fear really has nothing to do with it. It's a whole different animal. We'll get to that sometime in October. You guys, this is going to be a great month. Let's start October with as much great momentum as possible. I'll see you guys down in the comments. And of course, here's your fortune.